First you trade the Cadillac for a microphone. Then you lie to me about the band. Now you're gonna put me right back in the joint.
They're not gonna catch us. We're on a mission from God.
You can hum the theme song, won't hold it against you if you get parts wrong. While the memory's not too strong, there's a piece of you from a time long gone. So while these fuzzy warm feelings remain, question we ask is still the same. Is it a treasure or just plain lame? Is this still good?
Hello, and welcome back to Is This Still Good, a podcast about digging up childhood treasures and reevaluating them through the lens of more critical and, dare I say, more mature adulthood.
Ooh, he dares.
I'm a host, Sage, and with me, as always, is a co-host.
That's right. Co-host Gavin, right here, in your ear holes.
And Gavin, we've got a doozy of an episode today. There's a new movie coming out this week that I'm very excited about. Jason Reitman is doing a movie about the first episode of Saturday Night Live, chronicling the immediate day before. I haven't seen it yet. This is why it's just an excitement and not an informed analysis of it.
I too have gathered the same from the trailers.
So Saturday night, I figured that's a good excuse to go look back at Blues Brothers, 1980s weird historical anomaly that is the first movie to come out of SNL. So from Blues Brothers to Saturday Night. And who better to talk about Blues Brothers than the sound mixer of Saturday Night himself, Steve Morrow. Steve,
thanks for having me on. I'm doing great.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled to talk SNL and just sound in general with you. We haven't had someone on the podcast who just knows more about movie sound than me. There's obviously thousands of people out there.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves,
I feel pretty confident saying that. I don't know how to mic up a Ferrari.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
We can't go through your whole career, but I want to tell the audience, most of whom are not sound mixers, from Little Miss Sunshine, La La Land, A Star Is Born, Joker 2 came out last week. We're pretending we're filming this in the future.
Perfect.
Leave that in.
So you've got...
What'd you think of it? What'd you think of Joker 2?
I thought it was some bold choices.
Yeah,
It really put a smile on my face.
Nailed it.
Yeah. More than smile, actually. But we're only here to talk about one movie from your career, and that is, of course, Crank.
Crank.
What if I just did a whole episode on Crank right now? Are you ready for that?
It was an incredible
Can I ask you Crank
movie.
questions?
That was a lot of fun. I mean, we had two directors, one on rollerblades, rolling around.
If you can still stomach us after this episode, please come back.
Oh, I'll come back.
I got so excited. I browsed through your filmography today, and I was aware of a lot of it, but
it's weird,
Crank caught me off. It's weird. It is weird.
It's a weird. I mean, I have actually, speaking of Saturday Night, Jason Reitman, who I've known for 20 something years, one day, like a couple of years ago, he goes, "You have the weirdest career, you have the weirdest resume." I'm like, "Yep, yeah, I like to kind of do whatever, like just pick fun movies and yeah, I like to work. So I typically don't turn down something just because it's like, oh, Babysitter 2, that's weird. Why would you do that? It's like, yeah, because it's fun. Who cares?
Yeah. You can always try it out once, and if a genre doesn't agree with you, you don't do it again.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I'm finding out more and more in Los Angeles is there's a lot of things that I have done for the money that turned out to be an absolute blast, and a lot of passion projects that I regret immensely.
That is life, right?
So, friend of the pod, Adam, and frequent guest Adam Boyer wants to know if you were paid in Red Bull on Crank.
No, we were paid in adrenaline shots, which was weird because we all shared the needle, but it's fine. Most of us survived it.
I do, as a sound mixer, I do have a somewhat serious question about Crank, and then we'll move on to Saturday Night Live. So I feel like So Crank is obviously, it's a kinetically edited and I assume shot movie if you have the directors shooting their own stuff on roller skates doing very dangerous stunt work.
Yeah.
But it's them doing, and that's a lot of the charm of the very, very unhinged movie. I'm really curious how sound has evolved during that time. I've been doing this for about 12 years, and I feel like lavs and wireless booms have gone from something that I only considered a backup to something that, with the right set of circumstances, you can rely on. A well placed lav with the right post production can be as effective as a
Yeah.
boom, and a lot of times those are now our only options as a consequence.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the interesting thing is my first movie that I did wireless boom on was Wonderland, and it's a movie about John Holmes and a murder that happens because of a robbery gone bad. And we had a great cinematographer, but he had two cameras going, and during the robbery scene he basically split. He was operating one and the other camera operators operating the other, and they just kind of split and ran around the house, smashing in doors and following the robbers. And so it was like, how are we going to do this on cabled booms? It was just not going to be possible. And so that's when we did, and that was 2001, I think, 2001. So that was the first time we did wireless boom, and I kind of haven't looked back since. And then speaking of movies with lavs, Saturday Night, 100% of that movie is lavs, all of it.
Really?
Yeah, there's no booms in that. Not because Michael Coletta, who's a boom operator, who's wonderful, couldn't do it. Technically he couldn't do it on that movie, but it's because when you see the film, everything's always moving. We're always moving, and our cast is in everything. And so Jason wanted to make a movie where you're just like, if you're in the scene, talk, say something, everybody can overlap, don't worry about it. And so we had 30 radio mics, and we would just radio mic everybody with a SAG card, so anybody that could talk was encouraged to talk and be in the background and just stay in character, because we're recording it. And the post sound was able to use it all as free walla and just all the stuff that really fills up a movie that you would have to get a loop group in to do. And we did it that way. What we did do on that is we hung a mic. We rebuilt the studio on a stage in Atlanta, and so we hung a quadraphonic mic from the roof, kind of halfway down the studio, and it's just there, and we recorded it throughout the whole thing. Now, quadraphonic mic is a 4-channel microphone in one capsule, and as long as you technically record it correctly, they can unwrap it in post-production and kind of throw it into Dolby Atmos and make it a giant surround mic. Instead of it sounding like 4 microphones, it sounds like 340 microphones, depending on the percentage of what they do with the algorithm. So we did that to give more life and air to the movie. Otherwise it sounds like a bunch of radio mics in a room, and it's like that's too close sounding for everything. And so, if there was a character deep in the background talking, they could bring more of the ambisonic mic in, or less of it, depending on how they wanted it to sound. So that was just a little trick that we used in the filming of, just because I knew based on other films that this is going to be helpful to just make all these lavs sound a little bit better, a little bit more real and more alive.
And that works through, I'm assuming there's quite a bit of walk and talk in this.
Yeah, the whole movie is a walk and talk. Yeah. It's essentially, our biggest scene is like a 4-minute. It's the opening of the movie. It's like maybe scene 4 of the film, and it's like a 4-minute walk and talk through the whole studio, through the whole thing, and with 30 characters going, and TV's playing, and everything happening all at once. And so it's really to put you in the audience into it's 90 minutes before the live air, before the show starts. So you have to, we've all been on set, and if you have to do something live, it's like, oh crap, here we go. We have 90 minutes to get ready for anything that's possible. And we've never done this before. Brand new show. Who knows if it's going to work?
Yep.
So it doesn't sound like it's a secret Birdman.
It's not all one shot. No, it's a bunch of, we filmed it like a regular movie. The original concept was going to be one shot, but a real one shot, like 90 minutes, not stopping. But I think enough people told Jason, it's going to be that's going to be really hard and maybe near impossible. And then it becomes a gimmick, if it doesn't quite work right. So he got away from that, but we had planned on doing a one shot 90-minute long movie at some point. We had the technical specs and figuring it all out, but we shied away from it, and then we shot Super 16 film to give it the look, and that's the movie. But anyway, back to Crank.
Gavin, would you like to ask him a question about Crank while I kick my cat out, who has decided to start hitting the door back and forth like a tennis game?
No, I just think that we haven't quite credited the director on roller skates enough, because he's doing a lot of that backwards too. So
I will say rollerblades, and I will say at the time it was that's all right, and it was it was at the time when digital was kind of brand new, and so they had this giant backpack. I mean, it looked like Ghostbusters backpack, with the recorder on the back, and then he had the lens and the capture and a cable going to the bag, and then we watched him grab onto a police motorcycle that Statham was riding down the street, and he just grabbed on and wheeled all the way around it, and we're all just sitting there going, there he goes, there goes the director. Oh, if he wipes out, we're all out of a job. Don't wipe out.
Did you feel pressured to put your boom operator on skates for that as well, or blades?
He tried. There's some videos of it. It wasn't as good as the directors were, though. So we did it once, and then we're like, nah, we're not doing that again. But yeah, I mean, that movie, that was all radios, wireless booms, I mean, that's kind of that world. But I will say the directors of that, came to us early in the sound department and said, hey, look, Steve, we're going to be doing all this action stuff, and we want you to be able to get good sound. And I said, look, all your action is going to play in these wides and mediums, but your dialogue is going to play in close-ups. Just watch any movie. It all plays in close-ups. He goes, oh. I said, so if you just shoot the close-ups, give us a chance, we'll throw a boom over them. We'll get all your dialogue clean that way, and then your wides, you do whatever you want.
If you can teach me how to actually explain that to a DP and a director at some point in a way that I can also get that.
Yeah.
Because I know that knowledge, but conveying it has been a problem in my career.
It's tough. I mean, it's like what you have to realize, I think, at least from what I realize, is that, sound is part of the movie for sure, and it's a big part of the movie, but when you're on set and everybody else is there mostly for the image, right? Costumes, makeup, lighting, grip, cinematography. Everybody's there for the image.
Not me. I listen to movies in my car.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, but that you're listening to a lot of the post work, right? So it's like, I mean,
just a mono mix in my car.
just dailies without it. But no, so you kind of have to realize that there are only certain times where you can really say, hey, I need this, or else we're in big trouble. Help me out, kind of thing. But for the most part, if you just, I'm not one of those people that panic over the little things. And so when there is something to bring up or to mention, then it becomes like, oh, let's pay attention. What do you need? Okay, here's this, whereas if you're doing that every 4 setups, they're never going to listen to you. So
at this point of the year, like as we approach awards season, if you have 2 movies in theaters, let's say week after week, has that happened before? Actually,
I think so.
Movies? Yeah,
I think so. Yeah.
Do you find yourself just kind of in press tour mode? Because your ability to answer these questions is pretty impressive.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've been doing, look, my story is this. I was asked by the Academy years ago, 8-9 years ago, to talk in front of a bunch of, underprivileged kids and explain to them what we do in the film business. And I said, sure, I'll do that. That sounds like a great idea. Not thinking to myself, okay, I'm going to be on stage with a spotlight on me and have a microphone in front of me. This is going to be terrifying. It's going to be awful. And it was horrendous. I felt, this is going to be the end of me, and I'm just going to collapse. And so once that happened, and I didn't like it, and I thought, I got to get better at this, and then, it was like La La Land. We had a couple press tours, and it was like, you kind of start feeling like you have to get better at it, or else you're your own worst enemy. And so I just, over the years of doing different interviews and different things, you just, at least for me, I get more and more comfortable with it and just able to talk. Also, I just like to talk, been in the desert for weeks, me and the wife just hanging out, looking at Roadrunners. So
one thing that I didn't expect to find in the sound mixing community was how much we talk, because you'd think we would be the people that just shut up.
Oh, I'm the loudest person on set because I know when to talk. That's the hard part. It's like, I know when to talk, and it's brutal.
If you do it right, then people will listen.
Yeah. I have a tendency, I did this on my last film, and our cinematographer and we get along really well. And he just, after a rehearsal of anything, I kind of just start to clap, like, and you kind of gauge the director, and it's obviously, it depends on the film, but by the end of it, by the end of filming, everybody was cheering at the end of every rehearsal. And it's like, you just bring it all together, because at a certain point you just go, this is not that serious. I mean, there are serious moments, but we're making movies, this is what we do for a living. This is fun. And, but you gauge it, you're not going to do that on the set of Joker, because it's just not, Joaquin's in his zone, Gaga's in her zone. You got to just be respectful of that. But on movies where there's less, at stake, you just kind of have fun and get everybody involved.
That seems very counterintuitive that Joker would be such a... I mean, it makes sense with the tone and from the first movie that we've all seen. But like Joker kind of implies that you'd be able to goof around a little bit.
Well, we certainly goofed around in our own department, but no, there was a lot of work to do. I mean, it's a musical, and it's like, there's a lot, going on, a lot of technical stuff. And yeah.
Looking ahead at Saturday night, I'm very curious what we can expect it to sound like. You talked about the process of actually filming it, but is it going to be manked up at all? Is it going to sound like the first episode of SNL, which we watched?
No, it's the whole idea of it is that the look is 1970s, but the sound is modern. The idea is that you're a fly on the wall, so we want people to overlap. We want people to feel real. Jason and I did a movie called The Front Runner years ago about Gary Hart and being a running for president, and he was the first presidential candidate that was drugged through the tabloids about his personal relationship outside of his marriage. And that movie, he just wanted to sound real, and I just want this long shots, and I just want to be able to move the camera and hear the different people in the room, kind of Altman-esque, but only on steroids. And so we did that, and it worked out great. And then we also did that on Maestro. Bradley Cooper looks at it and goes, "Hey, how'd you guys do, Front Runner?" And I said, "Well, we just mic'd everybody and had everybody talk." He goes, "Great, we're going to do that on Maestro for all these party scenes." I said, "Okay, whatever you want to do." So we did that
right once, and you got to do it right.
Yeah,
forever.
exactly. Yeah. And then Jason goes, "Oh, wow, that Maestro was incredible. So you guys recorded the music live and had everybody talking all at once." Okay, we're going to do that on Saturday night. We'll do all the music live. All the performances live, everything live. I said, okay, so let's do it. And so we actually, on Saturday night, we recorded the score after work with Jon Batiste. So like, we were on the stage, we had everything set up. He brought in a couple extra musicians, and we set it all up, and we recorded the score for the film in the middle of shooting the movie, and then easily was able to hand it over to post, and then they mixed it and sent it back over to editorial, and they put it in the movie. And so the sound that you're hearing as the score is what we recorded on the set of Saturday Night while we were filming.
That's super cool.
Yeah. Which is just like, okay, yeah, you want us to record the score? Okay, cool. Never done that before. I mean, we've recorded music, but yeah, we did it. And yeah, I mean, it gives that. So I think Jason's goal is to make it sound real, but also not hyper, there's nothing like Mank, there's not an echo on the outside scenes, it doesn't, it's just standard.
You're not watching it in a movie palace.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're basically watching it and going, this is great. This is just anybody who's talking, I can hear them actually talking, and you can just focus on people and you go, oh, I know what they're saying, even if it's just a small amount.
One last sound question that I have for Saturday night. So
Sure.
SNL as an institution is very iconic for the use of Fisher booms. Gavin, do you know what a Fisher boom is?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm sure. Okay.
Yep.
I thought you did, and I thought you would jump in with an explanation, but it's essentially the boom that goes overhead in large warehouses and theaters, and it's how multicam is still shot to this day. Was there any practical use of it, or were there just because I'm assuming you have Fisher booms in the movie, whether they're practical or not?
Yeah, we didn't use any practical Fisher booms.
Damn.
They're in the movie. They're being used by our great background. We have this background team who basically went through training on how to operate all the cameras and the booms and move lights and things like that. So they went through all the training, and they would be in the background doing their thing. And it always comes down to props department comes over, hey, can you string up this Fisher boom, because it came all mangled, and you're like, yeah, sure. So
they always do.
you mess around and you just put it together. But and then you show like the Fisher boom operator like, hey, this is, you kind of pull this thing out to stand on. Oh, okay, that makes sense. So yeah, there are moments that it's definitely swinging around, but no, there's nothing practical in there.
Okay.
It seems like from the trailers at least, it seems like a very human and like down to earth story. So I guess there's less reason to go swooping. But I mean, they're majestic too on their own. Like they're beautiful.
Oh, they're beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd assume you'd like retrofit them with new microphones and play them off, but it's probably easier to just not if you're doing the whole thing on lavs.
Yeah, exactly. The whole thing was lots. I mean, it was just because also, Eric Steelberg, our cinematographer, had to light 360.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
right?
wow.
Because the shots were spinning all over the place. We're going everywhere. And so you can't really, if you put a boom up, there's 40 shadows,
That's
so
the DP equivalent of using all lavs.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, he's like, and it looks beautiful, by the way, but it's also, it's a practical set. Like he had to light it the way it should be lit. And there's certain scenes that are lit differently, obviously, and for moments and here and there. But for the most part, you got to be able to just swing the camera 360 and not see anything that's bad.
I immediately think of the use of the Fisher boom in the background, but I completely forget the 5 background that would be operating, like the 5-7 cameras or whatever.
Yeah,
it didn't even occur to me.
We do have a Fisher boom also in Joker that an old boom operator of mine, Craig Dollinger, he operated in frame in picture. So that's kind of fun.
So far, I've only gotten to use Fisher booms as props and never like actually as either a practical within a scene or as intended behind the camera. I want to though, man. I took that class at the Union, and it's fascinating.
Yeah, they're fun. It's a fun device for sure. We've only used it on one. What was the show called? It was the TV show for Netflix about the wrestlers, female wrestlers. Glow. Yeah. So the first season of Glow, they would always shoot this giant, huge wide of the boxing ring or the wrestling ring. And then they'd scoot in a close camera, and it was like, guys, and I get it, but like when they're wrestling, you couldn't put mics on them. It was just the stunt people. Like, it's too dangerous. Okay, so we got a Fisher boom, just hovered it right over, and it worked great. That's kind of the only time I've ever used it. But it was like, yep, these are 5-minute long wrestling scenes, and all the way to the ceiling. So.
I should see. I've got it's a low budget boxing movie coming up. I don't know how I'll justify it, but like I would love to use a Fisher for that. That would be.
I mean, they're pretty cheap to rent, I think. So
okay.
Yeah. Worst case, you use it for a day and you go, yeah, this is worthless. I can't do that.
So Gavin and I watched after we watched Blues Brothers, which we will talk about eventually. We watched the pilot of SNL, which is just an entirely different show than I'm used to from every. I mean, it's also it's the first episode. They're figuring it out. You just did a whole movie about that. I'm sure you know. I'm curious how close to reality it was, or if it really. I know that if I were writing Saturday Nights, I would probably, from an economical storytelling perspective, kind of condense a year's worth of anecdotes and kind of pretend they happened on one night.
Yeah, I don't think it's a year's worth. There are a few things that were pulled from other places in different times, but for the most part, it was as chaotic as that first 90 minutes is. Is this story going to work? Is it, what is this show? Who's making it? Do we bump Johnny Carson? His reruns to play this show from New York that we don't know anything about. I mean, I think it was that chaotic because we can look back now and go, oh, it's 50 years worth of a TV show Saturday night. But at the time there just wasn't anything like it. The quote, the people in the movie, it was a TV show made by people raised on TV for the first time. Right. And like no other generation had been raised on TV. These guys were making this new show, and it was just something interesting. We've all grown up with TV, the internet, and everything else, but this was it for them. This is the first generation.
Gavin, was there anything that really struck you watching that first episode of SNL?
Yeah, I mean, I'm here mostly to talk about the Land of Gorge.
What?
That's the Muppets.
Oh yeah.
which actually does bring us to Frank Oz was in Blues Brothers.
I mean, the even more direct Blues Brothers segue is that both Blues Brothers and the Muppets are SNL adjacent more than they are SNL creations. Like Blues Brothers predates SNL. It was Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi hanging out and spinning blues records and putting stuff together in Chicago, and that got moved into. You know what? I should double check really fast. Is there any chance the Blues Brothers are in Saturday Night?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't think so.
They weren't in the first episode that we watched.
Could have gotten cut for dress. I don't know.
True.
Yeah.
And it sounded like it started out as like they were an opening act for Steve Martin, who also does a lot of music in his sets. Like he's big into what does he play again? Banjo?
Mm-hmm.
With the Muppets.
Let's see. Yes, the Blues Brothers played. Dan Aykroyd, John Belushi performed Saturday night before their feature film debut. First appearance on the show as a musical act is in 1978.
For Steve Martin, if I'm correct.
Unknown ChatGPT. Thank you.
I thought you had a dossier in front of you, but
I
you've let
wish I
Google
did.
AI answer the first question.
Now I'm going to let our soon-to-be overlords take over that question.
Did you grow up on SNL? I'm really curious everyone's connection to SNL as a institution.
I mean, for me, SNL has always been like hit or miss. But yeah, I mean, I remember, growing up to a certain amount of SNL. I mean, Steve Martin was definitely there, and yeah, I mean, I grew up a little bit with it, but it wasn't until I was older, and then even then, like now, I'm like Weekend Update probably is the only thing. Maybe some of the digital shorts. I always find it like the skits are funny until they're not, and then they go on for another half the amount of time that they should. So I always go like, those 6-minute skits should be 3 minutes and those 3-minute skits should be 2 minutes. So it's like, it's always just like, oh, it's funny. And then it's okay, got it. So it's tough. I mean, it's hit or miss, but yeah, I mean the Eddie Murphy times and all those things, like the classic years I got to watch. And
yeah, which class of SNL is like your guys? Cause that's the joke is it's usually whoever was when you were in college.
Yeah. I mean, it was probably, what's his name? Billy Madison, Happy Gilmore. What's his name?
Adam Sandler.
Adam Sandler. Yeah, it was probably his class. Was my class where I went. Okay, cool. I remember the Eddie Murphy times, but I feel like it was at a friend's house and they played a videotape and I was like, "Hey, check this out." Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
So yeah.
SNL was definitely not a thing that my parents watched, so I would discover it at like sleepovers
Yeah.
in high school, and then of course in college when I have no sleep schedule. That's when I started really getting into it, which was the Lonely Islands years is probably a good way to think of it. The first year with like Jason Sudeikis, Bill Hader, Kristen Wiig, and Andy Samberg all joined the show at the same time. And that's still, there's a podcast out right now that I'm just going to go ahead and plug preemptively where The Lonely Island and Seth Meyers are just going back through every digital short. But really, it's like getting to relive the entire episode again and hear all the behind the scenes. It's their Saturday night, if you will.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. I still watch most episodes, especially if it's a host I like, but I let the internet kind of decide for me what's worth watching.
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
is
No,
probably
I've done that too, yeah.
tragic for SNL, although I'm sure in some ways their viewership is way up. Obviously, the digital shorts and Lazy Sunday kind of were some of the first things to pop on YouTube's early days.
Right.
No idea how money and residuals affect any of that on the internet.
I mean, SNL are the ones posting it,
Yeah.
so I'm sure that they're getting some of the YouTube monetization, and if not that, it is a good advertisement.
They could be making
for-
more money this
They're
way.
still on linear TV. Yeah.
Well, it's on
And also,
Peacock.
I mean,
We
I
all have
imagine that
Peacock.
I imagine the turnaround on that. I mean, not to be, cynical or anything, but I imagine that there's not a lot of high-paid actors / writers because this is your launching board. This is, you're welcome to be here, but we're not paying you that much. Kind of, I mean, I'm sure there's a few, but you know what I mean. It feels
Entirely
like that's
possible.
probably one of those things where it's just like you just churn through comedy and comedians, and then they'll hit it big on their own and off they go. Yeah.
The burnout rate behind the camera is pretty significant. Like we all work tough jobs, but we've never
In the
worked at
writers' room, you
SNL.
mean? Or-
Yeah, I think more the writers' room than anything.
Yeah.
I haven't really heard anything too terrible on the crew side, except that you are working late.
Yeah. I mean,
That
yeah,
we don't
I've-
have to work till 4 a.m. writing.
true.
Yeah, I've got friends who've worked in the props department and art departments, and I just know they're doing as much as they can
Yes.
with not a lot. Which is kind of that's the ethos of the show at a certain sense. Like, it is supposed to be about the writing, and they're often punching above their weight class. I know you were sending me some shorts with some early, like, they're pre-recorded, but the green screen's still really rough.
Yeah.
Well, I've watched some people join later. I'm trying to remember who it is who's also doing a lot of digital shorts, but the director who they brought in is like a crazy After Effects guy. And so their capabilities have gotten crazy, even with a tight window.
I think you're probably thinking of Mike Diva.
I sure am. Yeah.
It's a
Uh,
director of the
yeah.
Bash Brothers special from Lonely Island. My dearest thing that they've done. Another plug. We're just gonna plug things through this. Netflix did a wild thing where Andy Samberg and Akiva Schaffer play Jose Canseco and Mark McGuire, and it is absolutely just batshit. Steve, have you seen that?
I have not. No.
It's
worth watching.
Yeah.
It's about as long as we've recorded on this podcast so far.
Amazing.
Yeah,
And it's
a
a
lot
musical.
better, bang for your buck.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I grew up with a VHS tape too, but not of an SNL season. I mostly watched House of Buggin' growing up with John Leguizamo and like Luis Guzman.
What
Yeah.
is House
like a
of
stand-up?
Buggin'?
It was a direct like SNL ripoff,
Oh,
similar to Mad
okay.
TV. That was the VHS tape that I had of a loose sketches and comedy
Oh,
breaks.
This
funny.
tracks.
Yeah.
It lasted one season, and
This seems like a thing Gavin would have had instead of the real thing. His discount SNL.
He always had the Sega, not the Nintendo.
yeah, it was always a generation behind and rocking a PlayStation.
Man, it does what Nintendo don't. You guys want to talk Blues
But
Brothers?
that being said, I did grow up with the
There we
Blues
go.
Brothers very heavily. And that was probably my entry point into SNL because I watched this movie on VHS constantly and have listened to the soundtrack like throughout my life often.
That's fair.
It's a banger.
Yeah.
How many times would you estimate?
Too many to count.
Was it a dad classic? Was it you alone in your room watching it under the sheets?
I think it was a dad classic that turned into one of my comfort VHSs that I would put on and fall asleep
Okay.
to. So it is one that I have seen a ton of times. I know we watched it together, full disclosure, and I feel very bad about it, but I was like preempting jokes and laughing before they happened like a total jerk, and I apologize.
I have seen the movie before, but it was more like you
I
can't
know,
miss
that doesn't-
this. I'm not going to defend ever looking at my phone during a movie, but some of the ones that I watch for these, especially when I've seen it before, like I do need to like know who is that thing, who played the Nazi. It's like, oh, he was an old judge in Boston Legal. Clearly, that's
Right.
something that everyone will relate to. Oh, that wasn't worth my thumb time. But I did grow up with this movie to a certain extent, not as much as Gavin, but I think I'd seen it twice. It was something that similarly my dad showed to me, and my dad doesn't have like a lot of close movies. A lot of the things he showed me were jukebox musicals of some sort. Like we would watch a lot of the Beatles movies. I still haven't like clearly defined jukebox musical, but I definitely think this counts if the music
I would
isn't
say
written
so.
for
Yeah, I would think so too.
yeah.
Also, where'd the Nazis come from in this? Like, where? Because I'm, like,
Well, the Nazi Party started as a philosophy in the
All right, let's skip forward a little bit.
They're just the
Got
Illinois
that.
Nazis.
Yeah.
That's yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
We're all tired of the
totally,
old
Yeah.
Nazis.
totally, and it's about time
Every
we made a
day
movie
out there.
about them.
Yeah, it's one of 50 big problems in the United States right now.
Nah. I gleefully watched, this again because I haven't seen it in 20 years, 30 years. And I am like, yeah, when I watched this originally, what was I doing? Because I remember the car chase great. And I remember certain scenes. And then I'm like, this woman is just launching missiles at these guys and blowing up the entire building. And they just walk it off. And their suits are always perfectly black. It's a wild, fun movie.
I mean, did you grow up with this or?
No, I mean, I think, in my mind, I had completely seen this movie and I had, cataloged it as, yeah, I like that movie. It's fun. And then I'm watching it, in the last few days, and I went, Huh. I don't know what this is. It's so new.
It's,
Yeah, there's a strange movie, and I think it kind of comes out of what you're talking about in terms of the brand of SNL humor being, let's make a sketch a little too long so that we lose the joke, and that becomes the joke. And that's kind of the movie.
Which I thought was fantastic in a very charming way, and just really, loved it. And Belushi winning over the woman and then just throwing her in the mud. I mean, it's like, this is perfect.
Poor Carrie Fisher.
it almost feels like my reading of the movie was almost that it was an inverse Saturday Night Live, where a lot of times, like, I mean, the music is a pull. It is certainly a feature.
Mm-hmm.
But it also allows, just in the literal behind the scene things, that's what everyone gets to reset makeup and props and everything else, and maybe even get like a minute to breathe if you're lucky.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Maybe you get to drink a little bit of coffee, but probably you're just too stressed and aging and burning out of SNL. Whereas in this movie, like, a lot of the comedy scenes, the ones that aren't like, 50 cars piling up or cars driving through
Right.
malls or just like pure John Landis excess. A lot of them are just like bridging to the music, which is more of a priority in the movie, as it should be. They're Jake and Elwood Blues.
Right, exactly.
I'll be honest, the best joke in the movie is just that their last name is Blues.
It's the Blues Brothers.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
makes me smile every time.
Yeah, it's a heartfelt orphan movie.
Now, would you believe me
Yeah.
if I told you that the first script that Dan Aykroyd, who had never written a screenplay, wrote was 320 pages long?
I mean, I would believe it. If you've never written a screenplay before and you have like this idea and you really want to present it in a way that, like, here's my plan, here's what I really want it to look like. Maybe you over describe things so that the reader gets it, but then you chop.
Then this one car hits the other.
Yeah, and
car.
then this one
And then
car,
another car
and
hits
randomly
that
it
car.
flings over the other car, and they all fly out. It's like,
I mean, apparently it is all, I mean, that's a phone book's worth of over description. But if you asked me how long the script for Blues Brothers would have been, I would have guessed 19 pages. It'd be like, here's the outline of a scene, and then they sing this song, and then a bunch of cars crash.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's
Speaking
some of
of
that,
the-
where you go, okay, here's the song, and it's an eighth of a page, but it's 3 minutes long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With some description, but I guess you're welcome to write your manuscript manifesto, really, at that point.
Yeah. Exactly.
Speaking of your outline, Sage, do you want to give a quick summary of the
Oh
film?
God.
Oh yeah, what
You're-
is this
you're-
movie about?
you- Can we like tag team it? Because I'm not prepared to as bare bones as this story truly is.
I mean, I can give it a shot if you want to tap
I'm
out.
just
That's
worried
okay.
I'm gonna say Jim Belushi a lot when it's not Jim Belushi, because that's what I've been doing all week.
Well, his name is Jake Elwood. You don't
That's
have
right.
to.
Yeah,
It's not a Belushi.
Joliet Jake. So where do we
Joliet
start
Jake.
this movie with Jonathan Belushi?
So Joliet Jake is getting out of prison. He's picked up by his brother, Elwood Blues, and he forces him to go visit their maternal figure who runs the orphanage that they grew up in, a nun.
The Penguin.
The Penguin. She's
Weird when you're also watching a show called The Penguin concurrently with this movie.
This is subtle advertising. They're both on Max, I think. Maybe, I don't know. She alerts them that the orphanage is going to shut down because they owe $5,000 in taxes. And Jake's like, "We got you. That's fine." She's like, "But it has to be legal money."
Mhm.
And as they leave, promising to get legal money, the first place they go is a church.
Yeah, because they got to
Jake
get
sees
right
the
with
light
Jesus.
of the Lord. Yeah, and is set off. He realizes that the divine plan is for them to put the band back together and play a show to earn this money to save an orphanage.
Would
Because
you-
James Brown
Mission
told
from
him
God.
to. Yeah.
Would you? That's important. Would you describe them as, from this point forward, being on a mission from God?
They're on a mission from
Okay.
God.
If they would say that in the movie, it would make more sense.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah. all
it's
right.
only 320 pages, Steve. You can't cram a lot of dialogue in there.
So the brothers set out to put the band back together. Some come more willingly than others, but they do reassort the Blues Brothers band and start playing shows. The first one's a bit of a concerning situation with some country western fans. They then set off to try and make a bigger show happen. with the cops and the country western singers and a bartender and Nazis and eventually SWAT teams and I believe probably the CIA after them to stop them.
And the army.
In their mission from
And
God.
Princess Leia.
Army.
Yeah.
Carrie Fisher.
And the cops are after him because he ran a red light, by the way.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and there's a lot of crimes before that too. These are
allegedly.
Yeah. They end up with the entire world after them. Some of them justified, and some of them just complete happenstance. Some of them don't even really get explained.
And also, they get the entire band in jail with them, by the way. So
Yes.
Yeah, which was a little unclear.
It's a little sad.
Why that happens,
Yeah,
but you know,
that's
it's hey. But yeah. Anyway, they play the show. Everything goes well. They get the money. They sneak out around the cops again, and once again evading the army and everyone pay the debt that is owed and save the orphanage, all while a wonderful cast of incredible R&B legends make cameos is kind of the main driving point of the film.
Yeah, that is why the movie was made.
is car crashes and incredible R&B musicians.
spoiler alert, they pay off the debt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they're on a mission from God.
That's an easy one to speed run through, yeah. Yeah, there's two features of this. One of them is the incredible R&B performances by people who had a lot of them had stopped performing at that time, so they were available for the movie. Also, a lot of the cast had left SNL with Lorne Michaels at this time, so they were available for the movie.
Oh, was this made
1979, yeah. So it comes out in 1980. I'm assuming, I guess there was less of a pipeline back
Well, there's
then.
also the producer, Bernie, what's his name? Who was also a part of SNL.
I'm assuming a lot of the band members as well. I will say Paul Schaefer, which he was David Letterman's band leader, right?
That's right. Yep.
Yeah. Was in the house band at SNL, and he couldn't get out of his contract, which is why he's, I believe, the only member of the actual Blues Brothers band who's not in the movie. Which is kind of a shame because he's got a very unique look to him. And by the way, it's all the actual band members, which is very obvious because they're all terrible actors.
But this is not a movie where you need to be a great actor anyway.
That is correct.
I mean, you know,
Dan
it's just
Aykroyd.
Yeah, no, he's great. I mean, I just mean like, you know.
He is great. He's just next to John Belushi.
Yeah, it's just a fun movie, you know.
Which like also is their stage presence, which I quite enjoy actually, where John Belushi does a lot of the singing, and then, you know, you got Dan Aykroyd coming in playing a mean harmonica and then going, Soul Man. Yeah.
Yeah.
What I can't figure out about this movie and why I call it a historical anomaly is like this movie is so big and the budget went up so much for a music spin-off of SNL, which was a big show but hadn't had like a movie before it. And like the studio's terrified because John Belushi had a movie bomb the year before, a Steven Spielberg movie, 1941. So of course everyone blames John Belushi, and I'm sure every producer of that movie got to keep their job and keep doing things, but that's how our industry works. They wanted this movie to be a lot more disco, a lot more, I guess, literally contemporary. I mean, kind of makes sense. And they were also very concerned that white people wouldn't see this movie because it's predominantly black music. So it was supposed to be a $12 million movie. They talked him into a $15 million movie. Psych, it's actually $27 million once you wreck all those cars.
Boy.
That's the kind of thing.
Final sequence was $3 million in 1980.
I think part of what made really good 70s and 80s movies was just a sunk cost fallacy happening over and over again. Like you talk about, again, 1941, I'm sure they knew that was a mess as it was happening. But just like what happened with Jaws and Steven Spielberg, that's a movie that was a mess while it was going on. So they just had to keep investing in it because, like, what are you going to do? Throw away $12 million?
Yeah, we didn't have a David Zaslav yet.
Yeah. And there's also probably quite the big cocaine budget that went over because of the, you know.
Well, I mean, it's not to be crass, but it is John Belushi, and that is where his career and life are headed at this time. He has anti-drug security on him, but also fans are stopping by the movie and just giving him drugs, and sometimes he's missing, and they found him in someone's living room. And when I say someone, I mean just a house. He had broken in and raided the refrigerator and passed out, and that's what working with John Belushi is like. So I'm sure working on a movie with John Belushi during this period and we have to acknowledge it. This is an action movie from John Landis, who is somewhat famous for not caring much about safety.
Yeah, I mean,
I should have checked this earlier, Steve. You're not related to Vic Morrow, right?
Yeah, he was my... No, I'm not related to him.
Thank God.
No, not at all.
Okay.
No. Just in last name only, just in spelling. Yeah.
It did just occur to me that I should check my sensitivity and whatever.
Yeah,
no. I mean, like, that's a tragedy. It's typically the stance of this podcast, if we are covering something from someone difficult or problematic, to just kind of acknowledge it and move on.
Yeah.
I think that's...
that's fair. I mean, it's one of those things. It's like there are no safety regulations until you realize something is unsafe and you need to regulate it, or else, given our monkey brains, we're just going to do whatever's easier and cheaper, faster, and then once we decide, oh, that's not safe and we shouldn't kill people making movies, let's make a rule about that. That's just what it is.
That is tragically how it works.
Yeah. I mean, just like everything, seatbelts in cars, airbags in cars, like all these things.
Smoking on planes.
Yeah, smoking on
smoking
planes.
Anywhere.
Yeah.
Remember smoking?
Hey, you mean
Remember
Las
when you
Vegas?
used to have non-smoking sections?
Yeah, right next to the smoking section.
Yeah, John Landis is in the middle of an incredible run right now. If we ignore the Twilight Zone movie.
When was that movie? Was that before or after this?
This is after. He'd already had 4 absolute bangers at this time. From I haven't seen Kentucky Fried Movie. I know it's. I mean, that's a sketch movie, right? That's or it's a Zucker movie. Or we're gonna move on because I don't know what it is, and it sounds like no one has seen it.
Nailed it.
But then he does Animal House, which is obviously John Belushi during his tenure as Saturday Night Live, which gets him Blues Brothers, which gets him American Werewolf in London, Trading Places, Twilight Zone movie. Three Amigos, I count that as an SNL movie, even though it doesn't come from a sketch. Lorne Michaels did write that. Coming to America, and then it kind of falls off, and I don't know if it's because of just poor box office performances with Oscar and people didn't really love Beverly Hills Cop 3, or if that was an excuse to stop working with someone who's incredibly problematic and troubling, and because he's still alive. He's still making things. He's mostly working in TV, and I just don't think that happens with that run that you have.
Right.
Or maybe it was just Blues Brothers 2000 wasn't loved, and that was the last drop.
Yeah, that didn't do great. No.
I will say it can be a fickle industry, and I know lovely, talented humans who just make TV now, which isn't the insult that it used to be, but I get the feeling it's not necessarily what they want to do.
I mean...
Anyway, I made myself sad.
Oh, well... What are you gonna do? Just think about Nazis jumping in the pool in the river. Yeah.
This movie is stunt after stunt, and
sure
from at least I didn't hear about anyone getting hurt on this set comparatively. I'm sure there were some things. I mean, even just John Belushi doing the amount of back handsprings that he does, with or without.
I feel like
that
was
double.
a stunt guy. I feel like that was a stunt guy.
He still is doing like cartwheels, and
he's still doing a cartwheel into frame.
I mean, he's doing those on SNL.
Yeah.
I don't think he's doing all the trampoline gags at the church.
This is a wonderful movie in terms of the structure of the stunt and emotional moments like that. Even just the church stuff. Like, again, you've got James Brown doing incredible work as a pastor, but the elevations of that, the dance in that church, maintaining that interest to the level that like you get the trampolines, and it just feels like, oh yeah, of course, this is the natural progression. The light coming in from like the clouds above and possessing Jake, it mimics the way the car crashes work, where it's just like, yeah, this makes sense. Sure, let's
this all
continue.
Yeah, it's 1980. This is great.
My favorite stunt is when Carrie Fisher blows up the entire hotel that they're in. I mean, first she attacks just the door in general, and then they decide to stay at the hotel anyway after the obvious assassination attempt. Honestly, it's my favorite sequence in the whole movie because even just the train gag going back and forth.
Oh my god, the train is great. I do wonder, how do they time that? How do they make that work?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I
Movie magic.
I can assume. I mean, I love how silly it must be for some of those. I mean, for the exterior shot, that's just trades. But I think that they're inside a soundstage and like somebody's literally walking by with a train in the background,
Or running by.
just
You know,
running
just
by.
like, yeah.
Hopefully, making train sounds by themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
I wanted to ask, I've got more sound questions for you, Steve. I want to know how universal of an experience this is. There's a lot of older movies that are difficult for me to watch because of how the sound is integrated and how aware I am of ADR.
Well, I mean, I think you know, it's one of those tough things. I mean, a lot of movies fall apart more so not from sound, you know, from picture or visual effects that are just terrible. But yeah, I mean, I try to just watch it and just enjoy it as whatever it is, you know, because you can be critical of a lot of things, and you know, I did a movie where everything sounded great, and then I watched it and went, holy crap, they added every line of dialogue on somebody's back, you know, because they had to tell the story better, you know, and it's like had nothing to do with any technical thing, and you just go, whatever, it sounds like crap. But
no, I'm all for ADR as a creative solution.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was also tough back then. It's like, you know, our technology is so much better now. I mean, when I first started, I had a four pot mixer, so I could have 4 microphones, and I only had 1 track to put them on. And then eventually we got a 2-track Nagra with Time Code. It was like, oh, I can split the boom on this side and radio mics on this side. It was incredible. What a technology leap, you know? And it's like, now, you know,
30 channels.
Yeah, Saturday night we shot 58. We had 58 mics going on one shot, you know, because it was like all the actors are mic'd
and no
and
Fisher
all the plant
booms.
mics, yeah, no Fisher booms, and all the music stuff, and you know, it was just like, yeah, you couldn't have done that 20 years ago or 30 years ago. It would have just been insane.
Yeah.
You know?
I was thinking about that a lot with every shot that's like in a car, which there's some incredible process and lead and like everything else. All the car stuff in this is exquisite, but like, yeah, what are you gonna do with sound there?
Yeah, I mean, you could only do
especially when there's no place to even hide a microphone.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
with their angles. No, I'm just curious how much it actually bothers you, because I don't feel like it should bother me as much as it does, but it does.
I try not to let it bother me just because I know what everybody was up against, and you know, I think I'm more critical now watching TV, knowing that we can all do better on everything we do. You know, there's always limitations, but
I keep forgetting there's even more post-production limitations back then.
Yeah.
Like,
like
there's a limit, so you can add things.
You
can snip things up.
Yeah, I mean they had it rough. Now it's like, you know, somewhat easier, which is great on all of us because, you know, we no longer have to panic about certain things that we used to care about a lot more.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think I'm more critical now. But I also just, you know, hold up the reminder that, you know, yeah, this is a nice scene in a park, but behind camera could be a freeway and we don't know it as the audience. So, you know, maybe they had to re-record everything, you know, in that sense. The only thing that ever bothers me is like a walk and talk where it's like one word has changed and then it continues and you're like, what happened there? Like, did somebody drop a stand and they just didn't want to do another take? Because in my mind, I'm like, everything else sounded fine.
Yeah.
You know, but all of a sudden there's one word that wasn't a changed word. It was just a re-recorded word that doesn't match anything else.
Quite get right. Yeah.
Like, what was that? You know, somebody cough behind camera and they messed up a take. So
it was a C stand. It's always a C stand.
It's always a C stand, yeah.
There is something that happens in this type of movie that I actually still find charming, even though it's such a glaring technical issue, and it specifically for me was like Aretha Franklin going from her spoken dialogue into her singing voice.
Yeah.
It warms my heart to like listen to the giant change in the way it sounds.
Yeah.
And, you know, she's also not the best at lip syncing.
I was watching that. That's the biggest trouble they had on there is Aretha Franklin was not able to. I mean, I'm curious, Steve, if your ears can pick up. I'm sure they can. Some of the music in this movie is playback and some of it's live.
Yeah. I mean, you can definitely tell in this, especially in this era, you can tell easily. There are modern movies where it's like it's harder to judge it. You know, I've done plenty of live singing musicals down to, you know, no, they're going to talk, then bam, hit playback and let them lip sync.
Do you mostly get to make those decisions, or is that just over your head and you have to you have to fall in and figure it out?
Well, it depends on. I mean, it really depends on the director. It's the way I always sell it is saying, look, what we do, because what every studio wants is they want the pre-record done so they understand what the music is, right? So they have the pre-records done before we start shooting. And my thing is, look, we can always get it live, and we'll give them an earpiece and they'll hear the music and they'll sing. And if you don't like how it sounds, you have the pre-records and it's there. And if you like how it sounds, it's going to be a whole different vibe and feeling to the music, because it's going to be informed by their character, their costume, the set, the other actors, versus them in a studio, recording booth 3 months ago. It's always going to sound better on set. Now there's moments where it's, maybe it's not possible. Maybe they're on a subway train or something and you just can't hear what they're singing. But that being said,
really depends on your casting, I feel like.
It depends on your casting too. Yeah. Oh, for sure. But I mean, that was like, for Joker, with Gaga, she always wants to sing live. That's what we did for Star is Born, and she can do it and she pulls it off, and then what she ends up doing is elevates everybody else in the scene. Like, if actors don't really want to sing live, it's like tough, that's what we're doing in this movie. So,
but if you get to do karaoke with Lady Gaga.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, you're gonna want to do, even on like, A Star is Born, when we did the Pretty Woman, song as part of the Grammys or whatever we were doing, those actors came in, or the musicians came in thinking they were just gonna do it to playback, and they're like, no, we're gonna do it live. And they were like, really? I was like, oh yeah, here's your mic, you're all set. And they were like, okay. Nobody told them, but it's like, no, that's how we're gonna do it. Because worst case, it can be, they could just plop in the pre-records, and best case they use what they get, and it's gold. So I think, going back to your question, do I have the choice in it? I have the ability to say we can do it, and it won't cost you an arm and a leg, and it won't take any time. And those are the things that the producers go, oh, okay, all right. So then, whereas if I said, I don't know how we're going to do that. I mean, that's going to take a lot of time and effort, and then all of a sudden it becomes like, oh yeah, we don't want to do that, but if it's like, oh yeah, we can do that easily. So it becomes a conversation. It makes it easier for them to go, yeah, let's just do that, because that would be live, would be better. But, I did a movie called The Prom, Ryan Murphy movie that he directed. And our goal was, because it was a very Broadway musical kind of feel, it didn't have to naturally be sung live. It was supposed to be over the top, but we always wanted to try to get the first line of vocals live and then go into playback so that we could do that transition. And we were able to do it once, and then Ryan goes, no, just hit play. And then and we're like, okay, are you sure? And it was like, it would be super easy. Nope, hit play and let him go. Okay. And so that's what it was. And so in those moments, you don't, I'm not gonna argue a point that the director isn't interested in. So we just do it. Director wants to do it. Oh, you want to do straight playback? Great, sounds good. Ready?
Yeah. We got a guy for that.
Yeah, exactly. So and then you watch that movie, and by the way, like, the transitions that post-production was able to do in that were insane, because it doesn't sound, I mean, it's playback, but it doesn't have that Aretha Franklin, like, oh, she's doing dialogue and then bam, the song just hits play. It's like they were able to really get it to smooth out and not feel so jolty.
Yeah, and it helps that it's like an elevation. It's not pretending to be a live performance. Like, they've got, everyone outside who can somehow hear all the music is involved in a choreographed dance.
When Ray Charles is singing,
which is great.
Yeah.
Ray Charles is a really good shot, though.
Yeah.
I love that the movie, like, Ray Charles is famously blind, and the movie knows that that. And doesn't have to do anything within the movie to sell that.
Yeah, and Aretha Franklin, she just lost her entire cooking staff.
I haven't seen this in a while, and I don't know if it exists in real life, but there's a lot of movies in the 80s that take place at a country bar with chicken wire, where this is also, I'm going to call every gag my favorite gag in the movie, but just the amount of beer bottles that get thrown. Because, at first they're having a bad time. They easily
break on chicken wire, too.
The movie also, something that I can't buy into, and this might be a timeline thing, this might be me existing in 2024, is the movie expects you to believe that blues are the most important thing in the world to half the people, and half the people's least favorite thing in existence.
Yeah, I mean, I think, honestly, the movie was playing a lot of stereotypes anyway, which was kind of, I think the point to just like, magnetize some of the racism at the time. So yeah, I think that was kind of like their point. It was like, here's this group and here's this group.
But they throw beers when they don't like the music, and then when they're into it, they're still throwing.
They're still throwing the beers. Yeah,
it's good.
Yeah, you don't want empty beer bottles on you. Yeah, you got to throw beer. It was the 80s, by the way. So
that's just what it was like. That same type of humor is present when the SWAT team is chasing them through the building as they're trying to get Steven Spielberg the check for the orphanage money. They're just hut all the way through, and it goes on for like 5 minutes, even when they're scaling outside solo.
My wife looked up from her phone and was like, "What is the?" And I was like, no, it's just, I don't know, something that, I don't know. So somebody heard somebody do it once and just had them do it all the time. I don't know.
It is a much lower, like, again, the jokes, though, are pretty drawn out. Like,
it's low. It's like lowbrow. Like,
it's not Airplane, where it's like there's 5 jokes every minute.
Yeah,
it's
you don't like when you just
one
wait
joke
5
for
seconds.
every 5 minutes.
Right.
Yeah. Not all of the comedy works in this for me, but like those continuous things through the scenes. There's a lot of... Maybe my only real complaint about the movie is probably my same complaint with SNL at the time, where it's just like there's some sketches with some good ideas that I don't understand why they're 5 minutes long. My least favorite scene in the movie also has my favorite joke, which is when they go to the fancy restaurant, which is just a scene that I've seen done better in other movies. It doesn't seem like they would be that immediately out of place, but it also takes like 3 minutes of just sitting down and everyone looking at them for John Belushi to pull up and be like, "Sell me the women."
Yeah. How much for your daughter?
How much for the girl? And like, I get that they're there to cause chaos, to blackmail a band member and maybe get him fired, but like, just get to it then.
I mean, the shrimp is my favorite part of that. that scene.
Yeah, but you could have that through.
I could do without the jokes.
I'm saying basically,
but yeah,
every one of those kind of sketch scenes, you could cut a minute, and there's no reason this movie needs to be 2 hours 10 minutes. It could be a tight 2. It could be less. And the fact that like the studio made him cut it down from 2.5.
Yeah, audiences are also like, I mean, we like a faster paced movie now, because we're just so used to like.
TikTok
I just like every scene to be well paced.
No, I get it, but that might have been the pacing at the time.
Look, I would have spent 8 hours watching Babylon.
Wait, the movie Babylon?
Yes. I'm sure you've heard constantly that like a lot of people are like, no, that movie's too long, or it should have been a mini-series. I'm like, absolutely not. I would have watched 4 more hours of that movie if it had an intermission at 3 hours.
There wasn't much that was cut out of that movie, so it was pretty much not in a bad way. I just mean like that was pretty much, I mean, there was a lot cut down, but there wasn't massive scenes that were missing.
So I can't expect a 5 hours director's cut?
No, I don't think so.
That is heartbreaking.
I know. But
Zack
Babylon
Snyder
2
gets one, but Damien Chazelle
we're doing Babylon 2, 1934 through 1938.
Are you actually?
No.
Is that no? I thought this was like some breaking news, or at least you really excited me.
No,
there.
I know. Yeah, no. There's
I'm like,
there.
Feel like that movie, unfortunately, did not make money.
No, the critics were mean to it, in my opinion, unrightly so. Yeah, well, it wasn't long enough. But I think what happened was, you get a guy like Damien Chazelle who is a filmmaker who's really talented, and if there's any little dent in the armor, everybody tries to pounce on it, and then it just makes it into a bigger, worse problem than it is. And it's not. The movie wasn't. You look at the reviews, and it's like the reviews are terrible. The movie was not terrible. But that's what happens sometimes, But then, Joker 2 has the same situation where it's like, oh, the reviews coming out of Venice are not great. Well, by the way, the first Joker, the reviews were not great. So, yeah, it's fine. It's like that's what reviewers do. They review it. They try to find flaws and let you know what they are. So that when you go into a movie, you're like, this reviewer said it was perfect, and now it's not. What's happened?
I just assumed that Italy would have a vendetta against Lady Gaga after House of Gucci.
Oh no!
So I just assumed it would get bad reviews out of Venice.
No. I think. Well, I mean, she's I mean, Gaga is Italian, so anyway.
I don't know. I hope they like House of Gucci as much as I do.
I think they loved it.
Yeah. Gavin, you got any other notes about Blues Brothers?
You'd mentioned already that this was like a pretty expensive movie, and then the budget ballooned. It was actually the most expensive movie.
No.
At the time.
What do you mean, like ever made up to that point?
At the time, yeah. It was one of the most, which 1941, the year before, was also like up in the $35 million range. So
it's expensive to work with John Belushi during this period. How do you insure him?
There's jokes about, again, like maybe a cocaine riddled feud between Spielberg and Landis to compete on who could waste the most money on a movie. So I just think that's a fun idea.
Yeah. That is roughly $100 million today. So that's not, I mean, that's nothing for a movie today. But like, it is in the conversation. Yeah.
How much was Titanic at the time? 125 million, 150 million? I mean, that was like, that's going to break the bank. We're going to, nobody's getting paid. Now it's like, it's nothing.
It'd be about 400 million adjusted for inflation.
Titanic?
I'm sure is, yeah. Which I think is even behind like Avatar. I don't know. My brain just breaks once you get into these numbers.
Right, that's like 3 weeks' salary. What?
Well, I feel like it might be time to get to our final judgments. Gavin, would you like to explain to our guest how our patented 3-tier system works?
Sure, yeah. We're going to grade this movie, and it's going to fit into one of 3 categories. It's either going to be still good, better as a memory, or should we get into a massive car chase with it, and as it chases it up an unconstructed on-ramp to a freeway, do a backflip over it, and leave it careening off the edge to its untimely demise?
I was going to go with, do we jilt it at the altar and hope that there are no long-term consequences for it, but that also works. Yeah.
I mean, look, I think it's probably better as a memory, but I still enjoyed the ride. Like, I think in my mind it was a different movie, so better in the memory, but when I'm watching I'm like, this is thoroughly enjoyable. Like, am I going to seek this out every 3 weeks? No, but I liked it. I wouldn't leave it. I think it's still fine. I think it's a fun movie. I'd still give it an A because it was entertaining. It's like you're not gonna find a new religion out of it or anything profound. You're just gonna go.
It's the same old religion,
Yeah, it's like the same old thing. Just it's pure entertainment, just fun. Like, check out those car scenes. It's incredible.
Yeah. I think this movie really shows how meaningless our rating system is.
Most movies do, let's be real.
Every episode shows it a little bit more, but like it's intrinsic to the show.
We've gone too far. There's no going back now.
Contractually obligated as well. I waffle between like better than a memory and still good because there's a better version of this movie.
Blues Brother 2000? Sorry.
No, I mean, it's just like this movie should be 10-15 minutes shorter, and it's not pacing. It's just like I feel like there's 10-15 minutes of stuff that just doesn't work. I think like most of the comic scenes, I'm not gonna harp on each one, but even like they spend so much time after they're at that bar and the other band shows up, and then there's the whole thing about the beer, and I'm just like, they could just leave the bar and the other band, all the reason they need to chase them is that they stole their gig. Like, that's all you need. You don't need 3 minutes of back and forth. There's parts of this movie that are so slow that I somehow miss things. When they're filling up for gas, I don't see the trucker come in. I don't see the gas tank come in, and I see that they filled gas. I think they're still just waiting around because that's the energy of the scene, because they're saving all their high energy stuff to make the most crashes ever in a film.
Yep.
Until, Gavin, do you want to guess what movie passed it for?
I wasn't sure it had been. Is this real information? Please tell me. Yeah, what?
Well, it was
Ambulance?
actually Blues Brothers 2000, and then, but the more obvious answer is, of course, G.I. Joe: Rise of Cobra.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know, man. That's just film history stuff. So look at how good a mood I am talking about this ridiculous film.
That's what I'm saying.
I'd
like,
still
it's
recommend it to
movie.
people. I think it's still good. It can be still good with flaws.
Sure.
Still good
I
asterisk.
agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Half my career is still good with flaws.
Still good asterisks. Yeah.
Still good with flaws would be a good updated title of this show.
Oh man.
Gavin, how much do you agree?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm gonna give it a still good too. I do also agree it's not a perfect film. It's got some pacing issues. Not all the jokes hit. It's also like a very strange movie because I feel like it has different goals than most movies, which sometimes I find problems with. Like, I love a lot of stuff. I'm trying to think of another movie that kind of hits this, like Harmony Korine's. How am I forgetting the name of Spring Breakers?
You gonna bring up Spring Breakers on every podcast?
It's the perfect, to me, like the movie that's succeeding at what it's trying to do, and I like a lot of what it's doing, but I don't wind up enjoying the film because it succeeds at what it's trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
This is a movie that succeeds at what it's trying to do, and I really enjoy all the things that it's trying to do because it is trying to be a reckless car stunt movie and trying to catalog all these incredible R&B musicians at one point in time. And for those two things, like, I just don't know that the rest, like, honestly, the SNL aspects of it, the comedy sides of it, is a bonus on top of that for me. So it's so far into still good just with the musical performances that everything else is icing on the cake.
Well, I have good news because for all of us who agree this is a fun but imperfect film, Still Good Media just made a giant acquisition.
Whoa.
As we all know, Lorne Michaels is going to leave SNL at some point. It's actually not happening this season, but he has sold us, this is big, he has sold us the rights to Saturday Night Live.
He's decided that we are the Guardians.
Yeah, and we've got all that sweet, sweet IP.
We're reviving a canceled undercover police program from the 80s.
Oh, it's not a remake, it's a
You
reboot.
see, the guys in charge of this stuff lack creativity.
What the fuck is a reboot?
So all they do now is recycle shit from the past.
We're working on less of a shriekwell and more of a scream-make.
Expect us all not to notice.
I like it. Another!
Do I get a piece of this, or
You get
Because
to
of the
pitch
announcement?
something that becomes
Ooh.
our property. I know.
got it? Okay, yeah. Classic.
Yeah, we got to
Hollywood.
please the shareholders, you know?
Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
So we've got all this IP to mine. My least favorite phrase of all time. We could make a Blues Brothers 3000, but I'll be honest, most of the people in this movie are dead. And some of them are dead in such a way that, like, you should not replace them in any form, which was maybe the biggest problem with making a Blues Brothers 2000.
Yeah.
What I'm going to suggest is I would like everyone to pitch me a movie based off of an SNL sketch. Or, make a sequel to an existing movie. You can do another Coneheads. You can do a Toots the Cat That Drives. If you want to find out what's happening in that van down by the river, don't actually worry about who's still alive and dead. Because it's the 50 years history of show.
Let's see. I my pitch would be for a live action. Okay, so when Colin Jost and who does Weekend Update with him?
Michael Shea?
Michael Shea trade punchlines.
Mhm.
Joke Swap?
Yeah.
Joke swap. I think
Okay.
that should be made into a movie.
Joke Swap the movie.
Yeah, like a completely not appropriate scenario for either character to be in.
Is that kind of like a Die Hard where
Yeah,
like
but
you
maybe
basically
less
put
like-
someone out there with the sign
Yeah,
on
Bruce
them?
Willis on the
I
sign in
was
the middle of
thinking more of
Harlem.
like-
yeah, that's
Like an escalating, like, prestige or but any movie that just starts off kind of innocuous and then they get to the level where they're trying to kill each other. I wish I could find some
Yeah.
better examples. I mean, that is what the Prestige are, but there's some more extravagant examples.
See, I was
of
thinking
that.
more like
Face Off?
You have
Yeah.
well, yeah. I mean,
No.
you have like Michael Che going to the family reunion, being fed Colin Jost, being fed his
Oh.
his, and he just has to pretend that that's him now.
Okay.
And it's like the way the world is now, everybody's just like, okay, this is our cousin, I guess so, yeah. And then it's just swapped the other way too. So that's my pitch.
Joke Swap the movie.
Yeah.
There's a lot in there. I don't need every story beat of it, but like that is not something I was expecting. Gavin, give me something more expected.
So like I said, I know a little bit less SNL than I feel like you guys do, but one of my favorites is anytime John Mulaney's musical episodes where he's taken us like the Bodega Cat. You got the only lobster at the restaurant and that you shouldn't be ordering lobster at. Like I would flesh that out. Like we shot and missed with Les Mis. Give me a better full length version of Les Mis. You could steal some of the cast if you feel like any of them worked, and just give me the ordering the lobster at the restaurant Les Mis as a full feature. That's what I want.
Yeah, or the airport sushi.
Bodega Cat is what I want. I'll be honest. Like, yeah, give me the Bodega Cat feature.
I'd be pretty happy with 90 minutes of that. I don't even think you'd really need to increase the production value.
You absolutely not. No.
Yeah.
You shoot it on the set with the bear.
Treat that as a Blues Brothers, and then you have like a John Mulaney. Fuck it, Dan Aykroyd now and John Mulaney are the new Blues Brothers.
And you grab whoever is hot right now in pop music.
Yeah, but like still do those type of those are the bogus shorts, and then everything else is sketches in between. That's a fucking movie, man.
The thing that I'm frustrated is I know it took John Mulaney, like, he couldn't get these sketches happening while he was a cast member or a crew member or a writer on SNL. It took him coming back and hosting was when he was able to like get these things made. And you just know that he's probably trying to get these. He probably is trying to get these made as feature films, and just no one's listening to him because no one's trusting him in this yet. So I'm just hoping someone does.
These are better pitches than normal. I'll bring it down. I like the idea that, so with Saturday Night coming out, there's a potential for basically an SNL meta parody of Saturday Night. I want to go behind the scenes of another show. This is a Will Ferrell vehicle, and it takes place in the 90 minutes behind the first episode of Celebrity Jeopardy. I think the possibilities are limitless with this. You don't have Burt Reynolds in it. Okay, this is another one where a lot of people have died, but just you could write as many celebrity impressions as you want. It doesn't have to be based to anything. It can be a cameo factory. It can be something more serious. That's my pitch behind the frustrating events leading up to the first Celebrity Jeopardy with all those famously tough guests like Sean Connery and John Travolta. Just no Turd Ferguson.
I don't know these stories, but like, yeah, that does sound wild.
Well, you got to write them.
Oh,
come on, Gavin. We're giving you gold here.
We also have, all the SNL movies coming to our streaming service, Still Good Plus. And I'm very curious, aside from Blues Brothers, what is everyone's actual favorite SNL movie? I'm also excited because there's a lot I haven't seen. It's Blues Brothers.
I know, I know you said like besides, but like by far and away, that is probably my favorite SNL movie. Like,
we're only going to bring a couple, and we got to write the rest off, and no one will ever see them again. So, like, I want to get, to 5 or something, and I'm loose with what counts as an SNL movie. Like I said, Three Amigos definitely counts. I would count Hot Rod. It doesn't anything that like is kind of a star vehicle for people who are still on the show at the time. You get into some sketchy area where just like, does Mean Girls count? You can make that pitch for me if you want to say it, but like, I would love to know what you're keeping.
Wayne's World.
Wayne's World.
Wayne's World's pretty great.
A movie I almost watched today, but had to spend it at the dentist. I haven't seen Wayne's World.
It's a delight.
We're doing this show because I have so many blind spots, all right?
Nah, that's fair. It's fun. That one's a fun one.
Yeah. Also, what's her name? Is it Tia Carrere? I have trouble watching movies with her because she's a goddess and I get distracted.
You'll hear the song Dreamweaver every time you see her from, once you watch Wayne's World. So
I already do. In my annual Relic Hunter rewatch, that's just on loop in my head.
And there's Coneheads.
Classic.
Yeah.
That's an interesting one because Coneheads even predates Blues Brothers as a sketch, but they waited 15 years.
Yeah. Might be a slightly tougher sell. I don't know.
There's a long gap. I guess Lorne Michaels left for 5 years in the 80s, but from Blues Brothers, I think it's Blues Brothers to Wayne's World, there's no official SNL spinoff movie, and then it starts getting like every year.
Right, like Night at the Roxbury.
Yeah.
That's pretty fun too.
That's a fun one.
Yeah,
but
you start getting into like I
It's
might like it more now, but Night in Roxbury is a movie that I turned off when I watched it.
Oh yeah, and I mean it's not like it's like an 11% Rotten Tomato.
Yeah,
so
a lot of these do, and I'm scared of what like Ladies Man was a sketch that I loved, but I
remember liking the movie, but it's been a long time.
Also, like it's Pat is a movie, right? And it's like I can't even watch the skit.
Stuart
for 3
saves
minutes.
his family. Is like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
It's not every sketch can be drawn out.
Or
and
should
something
be.
that's not a sketch, but I'm counting as an SNL, and I want to plug every single time possible, is Popstar Never Stop, Never Stop. A perfect movie.
It is very fun. And I mean, like you already mentioned...
It's Lonely Island Spinal Tap. It's, if you haven't seen it, drive into your nearest Blockbuster, pilfer a copy, make certain you get 50 cops chasing you.
Just blow through a red light.
And a couple Nazis.
Yeah. Illinois Nazis.
You already mentioned the Bash Brothers unauthorized. That's a delight.
If you love Blues Brothers, what should you watch?
Maybe Men in Black? No, I don't know.
What's the connection there?
The outfits. Just the outfits and sunglasses.
Yeah. If you like movies with sunglasses in them, The Matrix.
And guys with black suits and ties.
Yeah, if you like hats, what's that Bat David movie where they just keep running through doors? Adjustment Bureau. Some great hats in that movie.
There you go.
If that is how your criteria for watching movies is it still hat?
I'll give a shout out to just the musical duel from Crossroads, which is the kid from Ralph Macchio versus Steve Vai, playing a guitar solo duel for their souls. That's just worth watching on its own.
Love it.
All right, well, it sounds like the point where we've just started spewing nonsense. We don't normally record in the evening. I guess this is what happens. Steve, thank you so much for stopping by. This was a delight. Obviously, you've got Joker,
Now you're just making up languages.
Saturday night. Anything else coming up?
Juror number 2. It's Clint Eastwood's, the crime thriller movie. It's coming up soon. I'm not sure. I don't think they have a release date, but they're closing out the AFI Fest.
And he's got a bunch of movies left, right?
Yeah. No, he's just starting.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's gonna do an Avatar.
Okay. So stay on the look for that. Are you going to be making a movie of your own of compilations of different desert creatures?
Yeah, it's on my
Instagram. Your
Instagram
all the time is just...
We have become friends with Billy. He's our road runner, and he actually comes up to the house and makes noises, and we go outside and talk to him. He's quite friendly.
So look out for that.
It's a true story.
We continue to have nothing to plug, but you can find us at Still Good Pod on various socials. Is this still good on wherever fine pods are casted? I don't know how to promote this show, man.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
Send us an email. We'd love to hear from you. And stay tuned for City of God, next week.
What's the email address to send you guys?
Oh, it's stillgoodpod@gmail.com. Thank you, Steve.
Nice.
All right. Well,
That's a good way to end it. Yeah.
That's where it'll end.
I have one quick story about Dan Aykroyd.
And we're back.
Okay, and we're back. So I'm doing a movie called Get On Up, and Dan Aykroyd's in the movie. He plays like a music producer.
Mm-hmm.
Right, we completely sleeped on the fact that you did a James Brown movie.
Yeah, James Brown biopic, and Dan Aykroyd was in it. And anyway, so we have this, it's during Christmas, and there's a Christmas party at one of the producers' house, and we got invited, because we're in Mississippi on location shooting this movie, and me and my boom operator got invited, Craig Dollinger. And Craig was like, nah, I don't want to go. I'm just tired. I just want to stay in a hotel. Sounds good. So I went to this party, and they had Skull vodka, like shots,
Crystal
right?
Skull,
That's
Crystal Skull.
Crystal
vodka,
Skull. Yeah, that's Dan Aykroyd's liquor company. So I grabbed one because I know, Craig was going to miss out. So I'm going to grab him one and bring it to him. So I bring it to him, and this is on like a Saturday night. Bring it to his hotel, knock on the door. It's like, here you go. Dan wanted me to give this to you. He goes, what? I was like, yeah, Dan, he was kind of bummed that you weren't there. And, so he wanted me to give this to you. And, oh, really? I was like, yeah, no, but, he understands. But, he said that you were talking to him about Skullfire. He goes, yeah, I was. So, I said he brought that to the party to give to you. I don't know. Anyway, I just kind of blew it off and then walked away. And I was like, I didn't, because Dan wasn't there. And so like Monday rolls around and Dan is on set, and I hear Craig go over to Dan and say, hey, thank you so much for the vodka. That was really nice. And Dan, obviously confused because he didn't give him any vodka, was like, oh no problem. Yeah, happy to, blah blah blah, just kind of played it off. And I was like, oh. And as soon as Craig left, I said, oh, he never gave you a vodka. He wasn't even at the party. He goes, oh, I'm so embarrassed. Dan was such a nice guy that he actually had Craig come to his trailer and he gave him a full bottle of vodka at the end of the day.
That's cool.
Like, here you go. But I totally set him up, and I forgot to tell him. I was just joking. It was awesome. That's my story. All right, now we can sign off. That's all I got.